There are stories Japan no longer tells. Buried under concrete, forgotten in silence, they wait, like roots sleeping beneath frost. But sometimes, when memory stirs, the earth remembers. And what is remembered, breathes again. This is one of those stories. A god forgotten, a tree that bleeds, and the man who dared to remember. Chapter 1. The Rumor in Nagano. Nagano was always quiet in autumn. The mist hung low over the rice fields, curling like thin fingers that refused to let go of the earth. Locals said that if you listened carefully before dawn, you could hear the mountain breathing, slow, heavy, and tired. Ryo Tanaka had come from Tokyo, a freelance documentarian, chasing after stories no one else dared to tell. He had heard whispers about a place in the Nagano forests, an abandoned village. And within it, a sacred tree that bleeds. At first, he laughed it off as superstition, but the villagers' eyes, dull and fearful, told him it wasn't a joke. Greater than, no one goes there after sunset. One old man muttered at the roadside tea stall. The god of that tree was forgotten. Forgotten things don't die. They wait. That night, Ryo sat in his inn-room, surrounded by maps and old photographs. Every picture of Kurohama Village, the place said to host the bleeding tree, had the same strange flaw, a blurred red line running across the image. As if something beneath the surface had pulsed when the photo was taken. He zoomed in on one picture, a grainy black and white taken in 1989. In the background stood the sacred tree, massive, hollow at the center. And there, barely visible, was a handprint pressed into the bark, small, like that of a child. He stared too long. The red line on the screen flickered, then moved, just slightly. He blinked. It was gone. The innkeeper knocked on his door. "Greater than, Mr. Tanaka," she said softly. "If you go filming tomorrow, take the old path, not the main road." "Why?" "Because on the main road, they still find blood in the rain after every full moon." Her voice trembled as she walked away. Ryo smiled faintly. "Perfect," he whispered. "Exactly what I came for." But as he lay down to sleep, he could swear he heard a faint sound from outside. A slow dripping, rhythmic, steady tack, tack, tack. When he opened the curtain, nothing was there. Only the forest, and somewhere deep within it, a pulse. Soft, wet, and alive. Chapter 2. The Forgotten Village. The road to Kurohama was little more than a scar winding through the trees. Ryo walked alone, his camera strapped to his chest, the sound of his own footsteps fading under the hum of cicadas. The deeper he went, the more the forest seemed to lean inward, trunks twisting, branches locking together like ribs closing over a secret. By noon, the path vanished completely. He stood before what remained of the village. The air was thick, still, and smelled faintly of rust. Collapsed roofs lay half-buried beneath moss. Wooden houses leaned at odd angles, their paper doors shredded by decades of wind. A single torii gate stood crooked at the center of the ruins. Its wood blackened and veined with something that looked disturbingly like dried blood. Ryo lifted his camera and pressed record. "Greater than, Kurohama Village," he said softly, his voice echoing against the trees. "Abandoned 30 years ago after a landslide, or so they claim." He paused, adjusting the focus. Through the viewfinder, he caught something moving at the edge of the frame, a shadow slipping between the houses. He turned. Nothing, only silence. Dash dash dash. At the village shrine, a tree grew through the center of the floor, massive, hollow, its roots spilling over the tatami like veins. And on the walls around it, hundreds of handprints were pressed into the wood. Some small, some large, some smeared as if dragged downward by someone trying to crawl away. He felt his throat tighten. The air smelled wrong, damp, metallic, faintly sweet. Then he noticed the old offertory box. Inside, under layers of dust, were dozens of small wooden tablets. Emma, each etched with desperate prayers. But one stood out, newer, written in a shaky hand. "Greater than, forgive us. Akanome-no-Kami. We gave you what you asked for. Please stop crying." Dash dash dash. A sudden wind blew through the shrine, scattering dust and paper charms. Something dripped onto Ryo's hand, warm and sticky. He looked up. From the hollow of the tree, a dark red liquid oozed slowly down, tracing the grooves of the bark. He lifted the camera, zooming in. The moment he did, the temperature dropped. The forest outside fell silent, no wind, no insects, not even the sound of his own breathing through the mic. In the lens, he saw it, a face, faint, almost human, forming beneath the bark. Its eyes opened. Ryo stumbled back, the camera shaking in his grip. The red liquid pulsed once, twice, and then stopped. When he finally dared to look again, the face was gone. Only the dripping sound remained, steady and slow, echoing through the empty shrine. He turned off the camera, chest tight, hands trembling. Something inside him whispered that this was only the beginning. Outside, the forest had grown darker. And somewhere among the trees, a voice, low, cracked, and distant, whispered his name. Greater than Ryo. Chapter 3. The Tree That Bleeds. The next morning, the forest was silent again, too silent. No birds, no wind, no insects. It felt as if the world itself was holding its breath. Ryo set up his tripod near the shrine, pointing the lens toward the tree. The bark still glistened faintly, as though something beneath it refused to dry. He pressed record. Greater than, day 2. He whispered into the microphone. The villagers once believed this tree was a vessel for a forgotten god. They said it bleeds when the god is awake. He zoomed in. The hollow in the trunk seemed to expand slightly, as though it were inhaling. He blinked. No, it couldn't move. But the lens caught it. The bark pulsed, slow, rhythmic, like a beating heart. The first drop fell at 9:14 a.m. It slid down the bark, thick and dark, and hit the soil with a dull tshh. Then another. And another. Within minutes, thin rivulets trickled from the cracks in the wood, winding around the roots like red veins spreading through the dirt. Ryo knelt closer. The smell was sharp and warm, not like sap, but unmistakably blood. His breath fogged in the cold air. Greater than, it's real. He muttered, the tree is bleeding. He reached out with one finger, almost in disbelief. The moment his skin touched it, the ground vibrated. The camera shook violently. From deep within the trunk came a sound, a wet, labored breathing. Ryo froze. Through the viewfinder, he saw movement inside the hollow, something twisting, slow and deliberate, like roots coiling around something soft. And then, a voice. Greater than, why did you wake me? He jerked back. The voice was not loud, but it was everywhere, in the air, in the soil, inside his chest. The tree's surface shifted, the bark split open, forming a wide, jagged crack. From that dark wound, a hand emerged, slender, pale, streaked with red. Ryo stumbled backward, tripping over a fallen beam. The camera kept rolling. The hand withdrew as if retreating into sleep. The crack sealed itself, and all fell still. The footage ended with Ryo gasping on the floor, the bleeding slowing to a stop. Only one thing remained on the trunk, a handprint, fresh and glistening, perfectly matching his own. That night, in the inn, he replayed the footage again and again. Each time, the image changed. At first, the video showed the tree as it was, unmoving, silent. But on the fourth replay, a figure appeared behind him, faint, standing at the edge of the frame. It was shaped like a man, but its outline flickered, as if made of smoke and blood. And when he paused the video, the figure's face turned toward him. Eyes hollow, smile wide. And it whispered through the speakers. Greater than, we share the same hand now. Chapter 4. The Last Priest's Journal. The rain had turned the forest path into black mud. Ryo followed the old stone steps leading up to what was once the inner sanctum of Kurohama Shrine. Inside, a single candle still burned, flickering beside a wooden box carved with ancient kanji. The air smelled of mold and something faintly metallic, blood that had long forgotten how to dry. He opened the box. Inside lay a bundle of papers bound with red silk, brittle from age. The first page was stained dark, blood turned to ink. Across the top was written, "Greater than, Journal of the Last High Priest of Akanome-no-Kami." The handwriting was desperate, uneven. Ryo read by the trembling light of his flashlight. Greater than, we were fools. The god was never cruel, it was we who betrayed him. Greater than, when the harvest failed, the elders chose to deceive. They sacrificed not the chosen maiden, but the priest's own daughter. They gave false blood, and the god tasted the lie. Ryo felt a chill slide down his spine. He turned the page. Greater than, the tree began to bleed, not from hunger, but from grief. Each drop was the god's sorrow for what we had done. Greater than, I sealed him beneath the shrine with my own hands. But his voice still calls through the roots. He forgives none, not even me. The candle flickered out. Darkness fell. Something cold brushed Ryo's hand. He aimed his flashlight, but there was no one there. The journal pages fluttered by themselves, though there was no wind. New words appeared, written in fresh red strokes. Still wet. Greater than, you have read it. Now it reads you. He stumbled back, breathing hard. The pages moved again, folding, rearranging, until the letters formed his name. Greater than, Ryo Tanaka. Then, the sound, soft at first, then rising. A low chant echoing through the shrine. Hundreds of voices repeating the same prayer. Greater than, Akanome? The air grew heavy. The walls began to sweat, streaks of red glistening under his light. He dropped the journal, and watched in horror as it breathed. Expanding like a lung, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Outside, thunder cracked. Ryo ran from the shrine, the chant following him into the trees. Behind him, a faint glow lit the shrine windows, red, like the color of dawn seen through blood. When he looked down, he realized his palms were smeared with the same red ink. It smelled of iron. And from somewhere deep in the forest, the voice of the priest whispered, Greater than, he does not want your prayers, Ryo. He wants your memory. Chapter 5, The First Night. Night fell heavy over Nagano. No moon, no stars, only the restless wind clawing at the windows of Ryo's inn. He sat alone, the candle burned low, the priest's blood-stained journal open before him. Every page he read seemed to pulse faintly, as though the paper itself remembered breathing. The police had come and gone that afternoon, muttering something about trespassing and local superstitions. They left quickly, refusing to take the journal with them. Greater than, don't stay after dark. Tanaka-san. One officer said. Kurohama isn't for the living. Now there was only silence. Ryo turned on his camera to review the last footage of Mika, his assistant. The one who had disappeared in the forest. Static filled the screen. Then Mika appeared, standing in front of the sacred tree. Her eyes were wide, her lips trembling. At second 37 she looked straight into the lens. Her pupils were completely black. The speakers hissed, and a distorted voice crawled out through the static. Greater than, you read it. Now it reads you. Ryo froze. He turned off the camera. But the voice continued, whispering from somewhere inside the room. He turned slowly. Nothing but the flickering candlelight and the steady dripping from the bathroom tap. He walked toward the sound. The mirror above the sink reflected his outline, except the reflection was wrong. It moved half a second slower than he did. He stopped. The reflection smiled, a wide, broken grin full of sharp, white teeth. The bathroom door slammed shut. Darkness. Ryo stumbled back into the main room, heart hammering. He reached for the journal, but the pages were no longer the same. The words had shifted, forming new sentences in red, wet ink. Greater than, can you hear it? The tree is breathing. Below the line, a small bloody handprint appeared, too small to be human. From beneath the floorboards came a faint creaking sound. Creak, creak. Then, a slow drip, something seeping through the wood. He knelt. Through a crack in the floor, He saw an eye staring back at him, open, unblinking. Dash dash dash. He staggered up, slamming the camera into his bag. Wind roared outside, shaking the shutters. In the window's reflection, someone stood behind him. Wet hair, white dress, motionless. Greater than Mika, he whispered. He turned, nothing there. But the floor behind him was wet, leading to the door, footprints. Small and bare, glistening. He bolted the door, breath ragged. The whisper came again, this time right beside his ear. Greater than, you can still see my blood, can't you, Ryo? The candle went out. A cold hand rested on his shoulder, then vanished. The camera clicked on by itself, the red light blinking. Through its lens, Ryo saw a shadow standing behind him, a figure identical to himself. Smiling into the frame. The static hissed louder, until it drowned everything, and Mika's voice came one last time through the white noise. Greater than, the tree is calling your name, Ryo. Then, silence. Only the faint, rhythmic sound of droplets hitting the floor. Tack, tack, tack. When the candle reignited, red light danced across the journal on the table. Fresh words appeared, written in blood. Greater than, the first night is over. The second night, the blood will begin to sing. Chapter 6. The Last Villager. The morning came pale and hollow. Mist clung to the rooftops like smoke that refused to fade. Ryo hadn't slept. His hands trembled as he packed his camera. He had one goal now, find the only living witness to the old rituals of Kurohama. Locals whispered her name with fear. Seo Takamine, the last villager. Dash dash dash. The old woman lived beyond the valley, in a place where trees refused to grow and the soil was the color of ash. Her house leaned to one side, surrounded by hundreds of paper talismans, ofuda, swaying in the wind. Their ink long faded to brown. Each bore the same kanji, shui, blood. Ryo hadn't knocked before the door creaked open on its own. A frail, blind woman stood there, eyes clouded white, her voice dry as cracked wood. Greater than, I knew you'd come, she said. You're Tanaka, the man with the camera. Greater than, I'm looking for the truth about the tree, he said carefully. About Akanome-no-Kami. Her lips curled into a thin, knowing smile. Greater than, the god of blood and harvest, she murmured. You think you found him, but he found you first. Dash dash dash. Inside, the air reeked of incense and old wood. Masks hung on every wall. No faces frozen in eternal emotion, laughter, rage, sorrow, fear. One of them looked exactly like Mika. Seo settled by the hearth, the smoke painting her face in shadows. Greater than, long ago, she began, Kurohama was the richest village in Nagano. Our god, Akanome-no-Kami, blessed us with fertile soil. In return, we gave him what he asked, a drop of human blood each spring. Her voice trembled. Greater than, but greed poisoned us. When the rains failed, the villagers lied. They sacrificed the priest's daughter instead of the chosen maiden, to save their own. The wind outside groaned through the talismans. Greater than, the god tasted deceit, she whispered, and he wept blood. The tree began to bleed. The roots drank sorrow. The god swore, if he could no longer be loved, he would be remembered through fear. Dash dash dash. Ryo's gaze drifted to a black chest in the corner. Seo noticed. Greater than, do you wish to see? He nodded. Inside the chest lay an old ceremonial robe, stiff and dark with stains. And beneath it, a wooden mask, half human, half beast, the mouth open in a frozen scream. The ofuda charms on the walls suddenly quivered, rustling as though caught in a wind that hadn't come. Seo's voice dropped to a whisper. Greater than, he knows you touched what's his. Ryo looked up. The candle beside her flickered, and for a heartbeat her skin peeled away, revealing black wood underneath. Veined with red. He blinked, she looked normal again. Greater than, Akanome never died, she said softly, he only waits for a new vessel. Greater than, a vessel? Ryo repeated. Greater than, blood remembers. You woke him, and now he remembers you. The light dimmed. The air hummed, low and deep, like the breath of the forest itself. Ryo bolted upright, knocking over his chair. Greater than, I don't believe you. Seo laughed, the sound thin and broken. Greater than, belief is nothing. Blood is everything. Her hand shot out, cold as stone, and gripped his wrist. The contact burned when he pulled away. A dark bruise in the shape of a mask bloomed on his skin. Greater than, go, she whispered, before he learns your name. Ryo turned for the door, but when he stepped outside, the house was gone. Only a patch of scorched earth remained, talismans shredded in the wind. On the ground lay the mask from the chest, split in half, leaking a thin line of red. That night, Ryo woke in his room, gasping. On his wrist, the bruise bled faintly. And from somewhere in the dark, Seo's voice echoed, gentle and hollow. Greater than, she's not dead. Ryo, she's sleeping in the roots. He turned to the mirror. Behind him, reflected perfectly, the old woman sat smiling. But in the room itself, there was no one. Chapter 7. The Interrupted Ritual. It rained that evening, thin, gray, endless. Ryo returned to the ruins of the Kurohama shrine, his shoes sinking into mud that looked too dark to be only soil. Inside what was once the main hall, he found something half buried under broken roof tiles, an old VHS tape. Its label smeared with dust and blood. Scrawled across it were the words, Greater than, the offering, year Showa 64, 1989. Do not play. Ryo smiled faintly. Perfect, he muttered. Back at the inn, he wiped the tape clean and fed it into a decrepit VCR. The screen came alive with a low hiss. At first, flickers of color, static lines. Then, an image. The Kurohama shrine, whole again, shining with hundreds of lanterns. Villagers in white robes knelt in rows, chanting softly. The sacred tree loomed behind them, its trunk already seeping red. At the center stood a girl tied to the roots. Tears streaked her face as she whispered something no one could hear. Then the chanting grew louder. Greater than, Akanome-no-Kami. Accept this blood. Feed the earth once more. The camera trembled. The girl screamed as red liquid began to crawl up her feet. Ryo leaned closer to the screen. Something about the cameraman's angle felt deliberate. The lens tilted briefly toward the crowd. And there, in the corner of the frame, stood himself. Ryo froze. He stared, rewound, replayed. No mistake, the man in the video was his mirror image. Standing among the villagers, smiling faintly. He laughed shakily. It's just a coincidence. Someone who looks like me. Then, on the third replay, the man turned his head toward the camera and grinned. The smile widened, too wide, skin stretching until it tore at the corners. The tape crackled. Greater than, you came too late. Ryo Tanaka? The voice wasn't coming from the TV, it was whispering behind him. The room's light flickered. On screen, the ceremony continued. The high priest raised a ceremonial blade, his hands trembling. He hesitated, and the tree began to shake, as though laughing. A wet sound filled the speakers. The trunk burst open, a surge of red engulfed the altar. The crowd, the camera itself. The chanting twisted into screams. The screen went black, but the sound kept playing, gurgling, gasping, something pulling itself free. Ryo reached for the power switch, but the TV wouldn't shut off. The frame flashed red, then melted into static. From inside the noise came the faint echo of his own voice. Greater than, not a coincidence. A reflection. Something warm splashed onto his hand. He looked down, blood dripped from the edge of the TV screen. The screen bulged outward, breathing. A hand pressed against the glass from the inside, then another. Fingers curled, and the surface split like wet paper. A figure stepped out. A man in white, face hidden behind a cracked mask. He dragged a blade that left a crimson trail. Greater than, who are you? Ryo gasped. The figure tilted his head. Greater than, I am you. Before the ritual ended, the lights exploded. When the room came back into focus, Ryo was alone. The tape had ejected itself, its label smeared with fresh blood. Beneath the old handwriting, a second message had appeared. Greater than, the cameraman's blood is the key. Ryo's hand trembled. He looked down, blood trickled from his palm. The same cut he'd gotten while handling the mask in Seo's house. The letters on the label shimmered, rearranging into new words. Greater than, the ritual resumes tonight. The TV flickered one last time. The tree appeared again, alive, dripping red, and inside its hollow, a woman's face surfaced. It was Mika, smiling, eyes empty. Greater than, you didn't stop it. Ryo, you finished it. Chapter 8. The Death of Mika. The rain stopped just before dawn. A heavy stillness settled over the forest, as if the world itself were waiting for something terrible to breathe again. Ryo woke on the floor, surrounded by shards of glass from the broken television. His clothes were stiff with dried blood. The VHS tape was gone. Only a faint humming remained in the air, low, steady, like the sound of a heart somewhere deep beneath the earth. He rose to his feet and froze. A figure stood by the window. Mika, he whispered. She turned slowly. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Cracks ran along her arms and neck like fine porcelain. From the cracks, something dark seeped, not quite blood, not quite sap. It shimmered in the dim light, pulsing gently. Greater than, Ryo, she said softly. It hurts. He rushed to her, trying to hold her, but her body was cold and damp, her skin fragile, flaking under his touch. Underneath was not flesh, it was wood, dark and living. She smiled weakly, tears, or something like tears, glistening at the corners of her eyes. Greater than, you woke him. He's coming through me. Mika's body convulsed. She fell to her knees, clutching her chest. Something shifted beneath her skin, crawling like roots seeking light. Ryo screamed her name. The air filled with the sound of cracking wood and breaking bone. From her back, a small branch broke through, wet and glistening, unfurling leaves the color of blood. The smell of iron and sap filled the room. Greater than, stop this. Ryo cried. You're not his vessel. She lifted her head. Her voice changed, layered, resonant, no longer her own. Greater than, I am what remains of the promise. The windows shattered. Wind tore through the room, and with it came whispers, hundreds of voices speaking at once. The walls trembled. The floorboards pulsed with the rhythm of a heart. Mika's eyes turned black. On her forehead, the mark of Akanome appeared, a crimson circle surrounded by faint runes that glowed and faded like breathing. Greater than, when man forgets God, God takes flesh. Her voice deepened, echoing through Ryo's bones. He backed away, grabbing the ceremonial dagger from his bag, the one from the shrine. His hands shook. Greater than, if you can hear me, Mika, fight him. For a heartbeat, her expression softened. Greater than, Ryo, please, end it before he does. The room exploded in crimson light. Mika screamed, a sound that split the air. Her body lifted off the floor, branches twisting around her limbs. The roots spread across the walls, painting them red. Ryo ran forward and drove the dagger into her chest. For an instant, time stopped. She looked at him, eyes wet, lips trembling in a faint smile. Greater than, thank you. Then she broke apart, not like flesh, but like ash scattered in wind. The red light vanished, leaving behind silence and a faint scent of earth. Where her body had been, a small sapling had sprouted, red-veined leaves glistening in the moonlight. Its roots crept toward Ryo, wrapping gently around his ankles. A voice rose from the floor, not hers, not human. Greater than, blood has fed the soil. Now, the soul must follow. The walls of the room cracked, splitting into long, jagged veins of red. From outside, thunder roared, or perhaps it was something deeper, older, awakening. Ryo tried to move, but the roots tightened, pulling him toward the sapling. The tiny branches brushed his skin, leaving trails of warmth that burned. Dash dash dash. The sapling began to grow, faster, thicker, until it stood taller than him. Within its bark, a shape began to form, a woman's silhouette, face serene. Mika's voice whispered, fading like the end of a dream. Greater than, you can't save me, but you can remember me. The tree shuddered, and from its core came a single whisper, deep and ancient. Greater than, the offering is complete. Ryo screamed, but no sound came out. The sapling's roots tightened, and the last thing he saw before darkness took him was Mika's peaceful face carved into the wood. Smiling through tears. Chapter 9. The Shadow in the Lens. Ryo woke to the sound of breathing. Not his own. The forest exhaled around him, long, slow, wet breaths, like lungs full of soil. He was lying on damp earth, the air thick with mist and rot. The inn was gone. The sapling was gone. Only the old trees loomed, their branches twisted into shapes that almost resembled human hands. His camera lay beside him, half buried in mud. The lens was cracked, but the red light still blinked, recording. He pressed play. Dash dash dash. The screen flickered, showing footage from the night before. But what he saw made his chest tighten. The video showed him, Ryo Tanaka, sitting right where he sat now, staring blankly into the forest. Except this Ryo was smiling. The camera panned closer, uncommanded. The smile grew wider, stretching the face like soft wax. Then the figure looked directly into the lens, eyes completely black, and whispered, "Greater than, you're not awake yet." Ryo dropped the camera, breath catching. But the whisper didn't stop. It came from the trees now, from everywhere. Greater than, wake up. Ryo, wake up? Dash dash dash. He stood, staggering through the fog. Everywhere he looked, the forest seemed to copy him, every movement echoed, every footstep doubled. He turned left, his shadow turned right. He stopped, the shadow kept walking. Greater than, who are you? He called out. The forest breathed in reply. The shadow turned back toward him, now standing several meters away. It had his face, but darker, carved by something ancient. Its mouth opened slightly. Greater than, you've walked too far from the body. Ryo stumbled backward. Branches cracked under his feet like bones. Dash dash dash. He found a small wooden hut and pushed the door open. Inside were old tools, broken offerings, and a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. He caught his reflection and froze. The man in the mirror wasn't breathing. His chest didn't rise. And when Ryo lifted his hand, the reflection moved half a second late. Smiling, even as Ryo's own face stayed still. The reflection mouthed something silently. Ryo leaned closer. 3 words appeared in fog on the glass. Greater than, you filmed me. The lights flickered. When he blinked, the reflection was standing behind him, not inside the mirror anymore. Dash dash dash. The door slammed shut. The air grew thick, vibrating with whispers. Ryo grabbed the camera again, it turned on by itself. The display showed the room, but with one difference. 2 Ryos standing in frame. One trembling, one perfectly still. The still one raised its head. Greater than, stop fighting. I'm what you left behind. Greater than, no, you're not real. Greater than, then why can I bleed? It reached into its own chest. Dark liquid poured from the wound, spilling across the floor, and yet Ryo felt the pain in his own chest. He screamed, dropping to his knees. Dash dash dash. The world began to flicker, light and dark, frame by frame. In each flash, Ryo saw scenes of himself, filming, running, laughing, dying, endless loops of moments he didn't remember living. He realized the truth. He wasn't filming the story was filming him. The reflection smiled again, stepping closer, voice now perfectly his own. Greater than, you're not the witness anymore. Ryo. You're the offering. The camera fell, landing on its side. The last frame it captured showed 2 shadows merging into one. Then the lens cracked completely, and everything went black. Dash dash dash. When the forest fell silent, only one figure walked out. It looked like Ryo. It carried his camera. And when it passed by a puddle of rainwater, the reflection that followed wasn't his. Chapter 10. The Spirit of the Old Shrine. Dawn came pale and cold. Mist clung to the ground like ghosts unwilling to leave. Ryo, if it was still Ryo, walked through the ruins of Kurohama with his camera in hand, its cracked lens reflecting flashes of red whenever the light touched it. Every step he took echoed like it had already been taken before. The village was silent, but he felt it watching. The air was heavy with memory. At the heart of the ruins, the shrine still stood, roof half collapsed, doors gone. The sacred tree towered inside, its bark black and wet, its roots pulsing faintly beneath the floor. Ryo whispered into the camera. "Greater than, I think the god remembers me." The wind shifted. Paper charms fluttered against the walls, whispering in voices too low to belong to the living. He stepped inside. The smell was familiar: blood, rain, and something older, like the scent of wet stone after a storm. On the altar lay a new offering bowl, one that hadn't been there before. Inside was water, clear, still, reflecting the broken ceiling above. He leaned over it. The reflection that looked back wasn't his own. It was Mika, her eyes gentle, her lips moving soundlessly. Ryo pressed the record button. "Say it again," he whispered. The reflection smiled, and for the briefest moment, her voice emerged, soft, distant, like it came from beneath the earth. "Greater than, he never died. Ryo, you carried him here." The floor groaned. Roots broke through the tatami mats, writhing like serpents. They wrapped around the pillars, the walls, then around Ryo's ankles. He dropped the camera, it kept recording, lying sideways, catching glimpses of everything. The roots didn't hurt him. They pulsed slowly, as if feeling his heartbeat, matching it. And in that rhythm, a deep, resonant voice rose from the tree. "Greater than, blood bound us once. Memory binds us now." The ground trembled. From the hollow trunk, red light poured out, filling the shrine like liquid dawn. Symbols appeared along the walls, ancient kanji glowing faintly, rearranging into one phrase. "Greater than, the spirit returns through remembrance." Ryo's vision blurred. He saw flashes, villagers bowing, a priest chanting, Mika smiling before the sacrifice. He saw himself among them, wearing the mask of the high priest. The voice spoke again, closer now, inside his head. "Greater than, you think you found the shrine. But the shrine found you long ago." Ryo fell to his knees. The roots lifted him, gently, almost reverently, placing his hands against the trunk. It was warm, like flesh. A heartbeat pulsed beneath the bark, slow and heavy. When he looked closer, the veins under the surface formed his own face, eyes closed in peaceful sleep. The camera on the floor crackled. Through its flickering display, the tree could be seen fully, vast, alive, its surface shifting between wood and muscle. Whispers filled the air, overlapping, growing louder. "Greater than, Ryo Tanaka, keeper of the lens. The god sees through you. Every frame a prayer, every drop a memory." He screamed, though the sound came out as static. The tree responded, a slow exhale that shook the walls. The altar cracked, the bowl of water shattered. The reflection of Mika vanished, replaced by Ryo's face, bleeding from the eyes, smiling calmly. "Greater than, you will never stop filming." Then, silence. The camera blinked once more, then died. The red light faded. Only the tree remained, breathing softly, as if satisfied. Outside, the first birds of morning began to sing. And from the depths of the shrine, a whisper drifted out with the wind. "Greater than, the spirit has awakened." The story continues. Chapter 11. The Prayer of Blood. The night returned without warning. One moment, the light still glimmered through the broken roof of the shrine, the next. Darkness swallowed everything. The wind stopped, the air hung still, thick, electric. Ryo, or what was left of him, stood before the sacred tree. Its roots no longer crawled. They breathed. The bark pulsed faintly with red light, as though a heartbeat somewhere inside the trunk. He raised the camera. It flickered to life on its own. The screen showed not what was before him, but what was beneath. A vast network of roots glowing red under the earth, veins stretching for miles. The voice of the god filled the space, low and deep, echoing from both earth and sky. Greater than, blood has returned to the soil. Memory has returned to the flesh. Speak the prayer, and open the gate. Ryo fell to his knees. He tried to form words, but his tongue felt heavy, coated in metal and dust. The camera's display shimmered, and symbols appeared, ancient, moving, alive. He recognized them from the priest's journal. The liturgy of blood. He began to read, his voice trembling. Greater than, Akanome, god of the crimson root. Let blood return to earth. Let memory return to the forgotten. Each word made the ground tremble. The walls of the shrine glowed, every rune pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The tree's hollow widened, red light spilling out like liquid dawn. Greater than, continue. The voice vibrated through his bones. Ryo's eyes filled with tears, whether of fear or reverence. He couldn't tell. He kept reading. Greater than, those who forgot shall remember. Those who denied shall kneel. The god who wept shall rise again. The roots rose from the ground, coiling around him, not as chains, but as hands. They lifted him gently, pressing him against the trunk. He could feel warmth, life, breath. The camera on the floor continued to record. Through its flickering screen, Ryo's outline began to blur. His veins glowed faintly under his skin, red lines crawling up his arms and face. He opened his mouth to scream, but what came out wasn't a cry, it was a chant. Greater than, blood for memory. Flesh for voice. Let the god remember his name. The entire forest shuddered. The earth cracked, light flooding up through the soil. The torii gates outside burned with red flame that made no smoke. Inside the shrine, the god answered. Greater than, you have done well, vessel. The bark split open, revealing a figure of light and shadow. Neither man nor monster, its shape constantly shifting, eyes like glowing coals. It reached out and touched Ryo's forehead. Greater than, you remember me. So I will remember you. Every vein in Ryo's body flared red. The roots released him, and he collapsed to the ground, trembling. When he opened his eyes, the god was gone. The tree stood still again, silent. The air was warm, too warm. He looked down, his hands were glowing faintly, pulsing with the same rhythm as the earth. The camera had stopped recording, but the red light on its side still blinked, steady as a heartbeat. Outside, dawn began to rise. The forest was quiet. The blood in the soil had gone still. But when the wind passed through the shrine, it carried a single whisper. Ryo's own voice, distorted, deep, almost divine. Greater than, the prayer is complete. The god sleeps within me. Chapter 12. The gods passed. Greater than, before men named the gods, I was the pulse in the earth. The voice filled the air like thunder rolling underwater. Ryo didn't move, he couldn't. The red light pulsing through the shrine had stilled, and yet the voice continued, inside his skull, inside the roots, inside the very air that wrapped around him. The world flickered. The present dissolved into color and sound, and suddenly he stood in a time before his own, a vision. A memory, or something older than both. He saw a village bathed in golden dusk, the people kneeling before the great tree. Their faces were painted red, their hands pressed to their chests. Blood dripped into the soil, and the soil bloomed with flowers. The voice continued, deep, sorrowful, endless. Greater than, I am Akanome, child of earth and moon. I drank the blood they offered and gave them life in return. Greater than, I did not hunger. I remembered. The villagers bowed lower. In their trembling hands, Ryo saw gratitude and fear. The more they prayed, the less they looked at the sky. They began to build walls around their god. A shrine, a prison of reverence. Greater than, when men began to count, they began to forget. Greater than, they called for rain but forgot my name. They built new temples for newer gods, gods of gold and light. The vision shifted. The same tree stood now among ruins. The villagers returned, desperate. Their crops were dying, their children sick. Greater than, they begged again. They remembered too late. One of them stepped forward, a girl dressed in white. Her lips trembled as she spoke a single prayer. Greater than, forgive us. The god's voice trembled. Greater than, I did. But they did not forgive themselves. The earth split. From the roots rose red mist, curling through the village like smoke. People screamed, not in pain, but in memory. They saw every deceit, every betrayal, every drop of blood shed for greed. The girl was the last to fall. Her eyes met Ryo's through time, and he realized it was Mika's face. Greater than, she was the last offering, and the only one who smiled. Greater than, she did not die to feed me. She died to put me to sleep. The world turned to ash. The voice softened. Greater than, I was sealed in the tree, but I was never gone. I lived in the root, in the soil, in the blood that remembers. The shrine returned around him. Ryo fell to his knees, gasping. His hands bled where the bark had cut them, though he hadn't moved. Greater than, why me? He whispered. The god's tone changed, gentle, almost human. Greater than, because you remembered my story. Memory is worship. The red light dimmed. For a moment, silence reigned. Then the final words came, low and mournful. Greater than, when they fear, I sleep. When they remember, I live. The ground stilled. The vision faded. Ryo found himself alone before the tree again, the world gray and cold. But on the bark, carved deep by invisible hands, a single sentence remained. Greater than, the forgotten god remembers you. Chapter 13, The Awakening. The city of Nagano was restless that night. Lights flickered across windows, televisions glowed without power, and in the far-off mountains, the air shimmered red for only an instant, like a heartbeat under the sky. Ryo stood at the edge of the forest. He no longer felt hunger or cold. The pulse beneath his feet throbbed in time with his own. He raised his camera, but it no longer showed the world, only veins of light spreading through the earth. Through roads, wires, buildings. Greater than, the world is remembering, whispered the god inside him. In homes across the valley, people woke from the same dream. A tree made of blood and glass, its roots growing through their houses, whispering their names. In the city center, digital billboards blinked in red patterns, forming words no programmer had written. Cameras, phones, and screens everywhere displayed the same trembling image. The sacred tree, alive, breathing. In the background, Ryo's voice echoed softly through the static. Greater than, when blood remembers its source, the god awakens. Back in the forest, the wind carried the sound of chanting. Not human voices, something older, resonant, overlapping. The trees bent toward the shrine, their leaves trembling with every syllable. Ryo walked into the ruins, the ground glowing faintly beneath his steps. He placed his hand against the sacred tree. The moment he did, the forest exhaled, a slow, deep breath that shook the mountain. Red light burst from the trunk, spreading outward through the soil. It traveled beneath rivers, into cities, along electrical lines, until even the neon lights of Nagano flickered crimson. Greater than, it begins again, the voice said through him. People across Japan paused in their tracks as every screen, every signal turned red. Those who looked too long saw not pixels but eyes staring back. Some knelt, some screamed. Others began to pray without knowing why. Inside the shrine, Ryo's eyes glowed faintly. The symbols carved into the walls pulsed with life, repeating one word over and over, Akanome. He felt the god's presence pushing through his skin, his veins, his voice. He lifted the camera, speaking in a tone that wasn't entirely his own. Greater than, the offering is complete. The god will walk again, not in flesh, but in memory. The ground shook. Trees split open, their roots forming bridges of red light. Above the shrine, a spiral of clouds turned slowly, pulsing like a living eye. The god's voice filled every corner of Ryo's mind. Greater than, not destroy. Rejoin. Man and God, wound and soil. One body, one memory. Ryo dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. He felt himself dissolving, his heartbeat merging with the earth's. The camera fell, still recording, catching the moment when his body began to glow, not burning. Not dying, but becoming. In the last frame, Ryo's silhouette merged with the tree. Two shadows, one shape. The chanting stopped. The forest fell silent again. Then, a whisper, faint, like a sigh through leaves. Greater than, he is not gone. He is everywhere you remember him. The next morning, the sky over Nagano turned clear and pale. But those who passed the forest swore they heard a soft sound. Deep beneath the ground. The slow, steady rhythm of a heart that was not human. Chapter 14. The Weeping Tree. Greater than File No. K47, Department of Paranormal Studies. Japan. Date: September 11, 2055. Lead investigator: Dr. Akari Nishimoto. Location: Restricted Zone, former Kurohama Forest. Nagano Prefecture. Opening report video transcript. Greater than 30 years have passed since the Kurohama incident. The forest remains sealed, yet seismic sensors record rhythmic vibrations each night, slow, consistent, like a heartbeat. The footage showed the research team walking through dense fog. Branches clawed at their lights. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. Then, the trees opened into a clearing. There it stood. The weeping tree. Massive, black, alive. Its bark gleamed wetly as though dew had condensed from within. Greater than, local rumors say the tree cries on nights of the full moon. Akari said, her voice steady on the recording. They also say a man's face appears in its bark when it does. Field audio log, 2245 JST. Greater than 2245, light winds. Temperature drop detected. 2302, fluid dripping sound. Source undetermined. 2307, team member Takahashi claims to see a human face in the trunk. 10 seconds of silence. Then a faint male whisper. Impossible to locate spatially. Greater than, you saw me. That means you remember. The radio cut out. Dr. Nishimoto's field journal, excerpt. Greater than, I dreamt of a man filming himself beside the tree. He told me, I thought I was recording a story, but the story was recording me. When I woke, there was condensation on my hand, the same temperature as blood. She had drawn a symbol in the margin, a circle surrounded by 4 runes. The mark of Akanome. Final unreleased footage, camera 3. The image was grainy, trembling. The team stood in the clearing. The tree loomed silent behind them. Then, movement. Red liquid seeped from the bark, trickling down like tears. The drops hit the soil and hissed. In one of them, reflected in impossible clarity, was the face of Ryo Tanaka. He smiled gently, almost sadly. Greater than, he's still here. Akari whispered. The camera's microphone captured a soft reply, not through air, but through vibration in the ground. Greater than, don't cry. The earth remembers. Static flooded the frame. Official post-mission summary. Greater than, no remains recovered. Anomalous fluid sample collected, composition 82% plant sap, 18% human protein structure. DNA analysis. Match found, surname, Tanaka. Greater than, no living Tanaka family members registered in Nagano for the last 3 decades. The report ended there. But the security camera at the research station kept recording. Hours after the team vanished, a lone figure appeared at the edge of the forest, holding a camera. its lens glowing faint red. He turned his head toward the tree. A drop of liquid fell from a branch and struck his shoulder, clear like water. Bright as blood. The screen faded to black. Then, one last line appeared, typed in the bottom corner of the corrupted footage. Greater than, the tree weeps only when someone remembers. Greater than, when the tears stop, the god will sleep again. Chapter 15. The legend lives again. Greater than, this is Jack Tanner's, and today, we're uncovering one of Japan's oldest and darkest mysteries, the sacred tree that bleeds. The video opened with cheerful music and a bright smile. Jack stood beside a rusted warning sign in the woods outside Nagano. The Japanese text beneath the peeling paint read, "Tachirikinchi, do not enter." He laughed. Greater than, they say this place was sealed off for over 100 years. Locals swear the tree cries blood every 30 years. But hey, legends don't scare us, right? Behind him, fog drifted through the trees like something alive. Night vision footage begins, 2:03 a.m. The camera trembled as Jack and his crew pushed deeper into the forest. Their flashlights cut through layers of mist until the trees opened into a clearing. At its center stood the weeping tree, vast, ancient, and black as obsidian. The trunk glistened. It looked wet. Greater than, Jesus, it's huge, one of the crew whispered. Jack stepped closer, hand brushing the bark. It felt warm. When he pulled back, his fingers glistened red. Greater than, is that blood? The camera zoomed in automatically, though no one touched it. The lens trembled, focusing on a shape in the wood. A face. Eyes half closed, lips curved into a soft, familiar smile. Greater than, that's impossible. Jack breathed. Audio log, 2:07 a.m. The group set up camp beside the clearing. Rain began to fall, thin, cold, metallic. Through the static of the recording, a faint heartbeat could be heard. Then a voice, male, gentle. Greater than, you saw me. That means you remember. The crew panicked. One camera fell, still rolling. Its lens caught a single figure standing beneath the tree, a man with a camera in hand. The face flickered in the light. It was Ryo Tanaka. He turned toward the lens, lips moving without sound. Automatic subtitles flickered on the footage, generated by the software. Greater than, you came too late. Jack's personal audio notes, found after disappearance. Greater than, day 2. I don't know how to explain this. We all dream the same thing, a giant red tree breathing in the dark. A voice calling my name. The others keep saying they hear something in the static when we play the footage back. It sounds like my own voice. Static distortion. Then whispering. Greater than, not your voice. Ours. The footage cut to daylight. The campsite was empty. Only cameras remained, their red lights blinking in unison. One by one, the devices turned to face the tree. Through every lens, the same figure stood, Ryo, holding his own camera, recording back at them. He smiled. Greater than, when memory spreads, the god wakes again. The ground began to hum. The tree's roots rippled outward, breaking the surface. Each root ended in a small, human hand. Final clip, uploaded to the internet unidentified source. July 2085. Title: The Sacred Tree That Bleeds, Part 2. Duration: 2 minutes, 37 seconds. A man, Jack, stands alone before the tree. Behind him, faint silhouettes move within the bark, men, women, all smiling, their faces shimmering like reflections in red glass. As he speaks, his voice trembles. Greater than, I thought this was a myth. But the tree's not bleeding anymore, it's breathing. He turns the camera toward himself, and his eyes are completely black. Blood trickles from the lens instead of light. Greater than, you're watching this, he says, smiling faintly. That means you remember too. Static. Then darkness. Postscript, undated document, no known author. Greater than every 30 years, the story surfaces again. A video, a post, a whisper. Each time someone watches, the god awakens a little more. Greater than the tree does not grow in soil anymore. It grows in memory. The footage has long been lost. The forest sealed. Yet every few decades, someone whispers the same name, and the story surfaces again, faint, distorted, alive. If you've heard it now, it means the roots have reached you. And somewhere, beneath the soil of your own memory, something ancient has begun to stir.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.